My hands shook as I balanced the lunch tray outside David's bedroom door. The smell of homemade chicken soup filled the hallway, but suddenly it made me sick to my stomach. Just seconds ago, I'd been climbing the stairs with a smile, happy to bring my husband his favorite meal. Now I stood frozen, unable to move. "She's nothing but a free servant," David's voice came through the slightly open door. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I had heard him talking on the phone as I reached the top of the stairs. Usually, I would knock and enter right away, but something in his tone made me pause. His voice sounded different, stronger, more alive than I had heard in years. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. Who was he talking to? And why was he calling me a servant? I took a tiny step closer to the door, trying not to make the old floorboards creak. The lunch tray felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my trembling hands. "You don't understand," David continued, his voice clear and confident. "I've got the perfect setup here. She does everything for me. Cooking, cleaning, bathing me, even helping me use the bathroom. And she never complains. Not once in 7 years. 7 years. 7 long years since the accident that changed everything. 7 years since I gave up my job, my friends, my whole life to take care of the man I loved more than anything in the world." I pressed my ear closer to the crack in the door, my breathing shallow and quiet. The lunch tray wobbled, and I had to grip it tighter to keep from dropping it. "Trust me, it's better than having a real nurse," David laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time I had heard him laugh like that? "She works for free, and she thinks she's being a good wife." The room started spinning around me. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing all the air out of my lungs. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare. But then I saw something through the gap in the door that made my blood turn to ice. David was standing up, not sitting in his wheelchair, not lying in bed like he had been every single day for 7 years. He was standing on his own 2 feet, holding his phone to his ear, walking slowly around the room like it was the most normal thing in the world. I watched in complete shock as he took step after step. His legs moved perfectly. His back was straight. There was nothing wrong with him. Nothing at all. The lunch tray slipped from my numb fingers, but somehow I caught it before it crashed to the floor. The sudden movement made me dizzy, and I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling down. My husband could walk. My husband, who I had been lifting in and out of bed every morning and night for 7 years, could walk. My husband, who I had been helping use the bathroom, who I had been bathing and dressing and feeding, was perfectly fine. "The best part is," David's voice continued from inside the room, "she actually feels sorry for me. She thinks she's some kind of hero, sacrificing her life for her poor, helpless husband." I backed away from the door as quietly as I could, my heart hammering against my ribs. Each step felt like I was walking through thick mud. My mind couldn't process what I had just seen and heard. Somehow I made it down the stairs and into the kitchen without dropping the tray. I set it on the counter and stared at the soup I had made with so much love and care. The same soup I had been making every Tuesday for 7 years because David said it was the only thing that made him feel better. I sank into a kitchen chair, my whole body shaking. 7 years of my life. 7 years of believing I was helping the man I loved recover from a terrible accident. How long had he been lying to me? And what else was he hiding? 7 years ago, my life was completely different. I can barely remember that version of myself now. The woman who wore business suits and carried a briefcase, who had her own office with a window view of the city. David and I had been married for only 8 months when everything changed. We were so happy then. I worked at a big marketing company downtown, and David ran his own construction business. We had plans to buy a bigger house, maybe start a family in a few years. Every morning, we would drink coffee together and talk about our dreams. I remember that Tuesday morning like it was yesterday, even though I wish I could forget it forever. David kissed me goodbye at the door, just like every other day. He was wearing his yellow hard hat and steel-toed boots. His lunchbox was packed with the sandwich I had made him, turkey and cheese, his favorite. "See you tonight, beautiful," he said, flashing that smile that made me fall in love with him in the first place. "I'll pick up dinner on the way home." "Be careful," I told him, straightening his collar like I always did. I love you. Love you too. Those were the last normal words we ever shared. At 2:30 that afternoon, my phone rang at work. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it right away. "Is this Emma Thompson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Emma." "Ma'am, I'm calling from City Hospital. Your husband David has been in an accident. You need to come right away." The world stopped. Everything around me went silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. My coworkers kept typing and talking, but it all felt like I was watching them through thick glass. "What kind of accident?" I managed to ask. "A scaffolding collapse at his work site. Ma'am, you really need to get here as soon as possible." I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I don't remember parking or running through the emergency room doors. The first clear memory I have is sitting in a small, cold room with a doctor who looked older than my grandfather. "The damage to his spinal cord is severe," Dr. Peterson said, his voice gentle but firm. "The accident crushed several vertebrae in his lower back. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, but your husband will never walk again." Never walk again. The words echoed in my head over and over. "Are you sure?" I asked, even though I knew doctors don't make mistakes about things like that. "Maybe with surgery or therapy or—" "I'm sorry," he said again. "David will need full-time care for the rest of his life. He'll be able to use his arms and upper body, but everything from his waist down is paralyzed permanently." When I finally saw David in his hospital bed, he looked so small and broken. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped and hummed. His eyes were open, but they stared at the ceiling like he was looking at something very far away. "David?" I whispered, taking his hand. He turned his head to look at me, and I saw tears running down his cheeks. "Emma, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice cracked and weak. "This changes everything. You shouldn't have to deal with this. Maybe you should just leave now before—" "Stop," I said firmly, squeezing his hand tighter. "Don't you dare say that. We're married. That means we stick together no matter what happens. In sickness and in health, remember?" "But Emma, I'll never be able to work again. I can't even go to the bathroom by myself. How can I ask you to—" "You're not asking me," I interrupted. I'm choosing you, David. I'm choosing us. We'll figure this out together." That night, I made the biggest decision of my life. I called my boss and quit my job. I canceled our plans to buy a new house. I sold my car to help pay the medical bills. I thought I was saving our marriage. I thought I was being the perfect wife. I had no idea I was walking into a trap. My alarm clock rang at 5 o'clock every morning. Not because I wanted to wake up that early, but because taking care of David was like running a small hospital, and hospitals never sleep. First, I would prepare his morning medications. 7 different pills that had to be taken in a specific order with specific amounts of water. The doctors said this routine was critical for managing his condition and preventing infections. Then came the hardest part of my day, helping David get out of bed and into his wheelchair. "Easy, Emma," he would say as I positioned my arms under his shoulders. "You're being too rough again." I learned to lift him just right, supporting his dead weight while trying not to hurt my own back. David weighed almost 200 pounds, and moving him was like trying to carry a bag of cement that kept shifting around. Some mornings, when my back ached from the day before, I would wonder how I was going to do this for the rest of my life. But then I would look at David's face and remember that he didn't choose this either. We were both victims of that terrible accident. After getting him into his wheelchair, I would help him wash and get dressed. David had specific clothes he liked: soft pants with elastic waists and button-up shirts that were easy to put on and take off. He always wanted everything done in a particular way. "Not that shirt," he would say. "The blue one, and make sure you button it all the way up. You know I get cold easily now." Breakfast was always the same: scrambled eggs, toast with butter, and coffee with 2 sugars. David said his appetite wasn't good since the accident, so I tried to make everything exactly how he liked it. While he ate, I would plan out the rest of the day: laundry, grocery shopping, cleaning, and preparing for his physical therapy sessions with Dr. Mitchell. Every task had to be scheduled around David's needs. The physical therapy was supposed to help David maintain strength in his upper body and prevent his muscles from getting weaker. Twice a week, Dr. Mitchell would come to our house with special equipment. "David's doing better than most patients in his condition," Dr. Mitchell would tell me. "His core strength is impressive for someone who's been paralyzed this long." I was always proud when Dr. Mitchell said things like that. It made me feel like all my hard work was paying off. But looking back now, I remember strange moments during those therapy sessions. Sometimes I would catch David and Dr. Mitchell sharing looks I didn't understand. David seemed more energetic during therapy than any other time. He would joke around and seem almost happy. "You two work so well together," I would say to Dr. Mitchell. "David is never this cheerful when it's just me helping him." "Some patients respond better to professional encouragement," Dr. Mitchell would reply, but he would never look me in the eyes when he said it. The afternoons were for household chores. I did all the cleaning, cooking, and shopping alone. David would sit in the living room watching television or talking on his phone. He got a lot of phone calls, usually from old friends or his sister Rachel. Whenever I walked into the room during these calls, David would quickly change the subject or hang up entirely. "Who was that?" I would ask. "Nobody important," he would always answer. "Just someone from work calling to check on me." Evenings were the loneliest time. I would help David get ready for bed, which meant lifting him again and making sure he was comfortable. Then I would sit beside his bed, and we would watch movies together. But David rarely wanted to talk anymore. He said the accident had changed his personality, made him more quiet and sad. I understood, or at least I thought I did. By the time I finally got to bed each night, usually around 10 o'clock, I was completely exhausted. My whole body hurt and my mind was empty from focusing on David's needs all day long. I had no energy left for my own dreams, my own interests, or even my own thoughts. I had friends once, but they stopped calling after the first year. I couldn't blame them. I never had time to see them anyway. My world had shrunk to the size of our house, and David was the center of everything. I thought this was what love looked like. I thought I was being a good wife. I had no idea I was slowly disappearing. It started with small things that didn't make sense. Things I told myself I was imagining because I was tired or stressed. 3 months ago, I left David in his wheelchair in the living room while I went to the store. When I came back, he was in the kitchen, still in his chair, but facing a different direction. "How did you get in here?" I asked, setting the grocery bags on the counter. David looked confused for a moment, then shrugged. "I wheeled myself in here to get some water. Is that a problem?" "No, of course not," I said quickly. "I just didn't know you could reach the sink from your chair." "I've been practicing," he said. "Dr. Mitchell says I should try to be more independent." That made sense, I thought. David was getting stronger. I should be happy about that. But the kitchen sink was too high for someone in a wheelchair to reach comfortably. I had checked that when we first moved David downstairs after the accident. We had to install a special lower sink in the downstairs bathroom for that exact reason. A few weeks later, I noticed the television remote was on top of the bookshelf when I came home from grocery shopping. The bookshelf was 6 feet tall. There was no way David could have reached it from his wheelchair, even if he stretched as far as possible. "David, did someone come visit while I was gone?" I asked. "No? Why would you think that?" "The remote is on top of the bookshelf. How did it get up there?" David looked at the remote, then at me. For just a second, I saw something in his eyes that looked almost like panic, but then he smiled and shook his head. "Emma, you're the one who must have put it there. You're always cleaning and moving things around. You probably put it there and forgot." I stared at the remote, trying to remember. Had I put it there? I was so tired all the time. Maybe I really had forgotten. "You're probably right," I said. "Sorry." But I knew I hadn't put that remote on the bookshelf. I was sure of it. The strangest incident happened last month. Mrs. Garcia, our elderly neighbor, knocked on our door early one morning. She looked worried and kept glancing at our house like she was afraid of something. "Emma, dear, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything all right over here?" "Of course," I said. "Why would you ask that?" "Well, I've been seeing someone walking around your house late at night, in your backyard near the windows. I thought maybe you had hired a security guard or something." My blood went cold. "Walking around our house? Are you sure?" Oh, yes, dear. I've seen him several times this past month, always around midnight or 1 in the morning. He's tall, like your David, but… She paused and looked embarrassed. Well, he was walking normally. I thought it was strange because I know about David's condition. Mrs. Garcia, I think you might be confused, I said gently. David can't walk, and I'm always asleep by 10 o'clock. Maybe it was someone else, or maybe… Maybe you're right, dear. These old eyes aren't what they used to be. But she didn't look convinced. Just be careful, okay? Lock your doors at night. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Mrs. Garcia had said. Around midnight, I heard a soft creaking sound from downstairs. Old houses make noise, I told myself. It was probably just the wood settling. But then I heard what sounded like footsteps. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and tiptoed to the top of the stairs. The house was dark and silent. David's room was at the bottom of the stairs, and I could see his door was closed. I waited for 10 minutes, listening carefully, but I didn't hear anything else. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on the kitchen floor. They were too big to be mine. David, do you know how these got here? I asked, pointing at the prints. He barely glanced at them. Dr. Mitchell came by yesterday evening for an extra session. He must have tracked in some mud. Dr. Mitchell was here last night. You didn't tell me. You were taking a shower. I didn't want to bother you. But I remembered my evening perfectly. I had taken a shower at 7 o'clock, then spent the rest of the evening reading in bed. If Dr. Mitchell had come by, I would have heard him arrive. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was yet. After seeing David walking and hearing him call me a free servant, I knew I had to find out the truth. But I also knew I had to be very careful. If David had been lying to me for years, there was no telling what else he might do if he found out I knew. I decided to act completely normal while I investigated in secret. The next morning, I brought David his breakfast with a smile on my face, just like always. Good morning, honey, I said, setting the tray on his bedside table. How did you sleep? Fine, he said without looking at me. Though I think you need to adjust the temperature in here. It was too cold last night. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask him how he could lie to me for so long. But instead, I just nodded and said, I'll check the thermostat. While David ate his breakfast, I went to clean the guest room upstairs. But really, I was looking for clues. I started by searching through old papers and documents we kept in the closet. What I found made my hands shake. Hidden behind some old tax returns were bank statements I had never seen before. They showed a checking account in David's name that I didn't know existed. Every month for the past 5 years, disability payments were being deposited into this account, payments worth more than $2,000 each month. But that wasn't the worst part. The statements also showed regular transfers from this account to another account I didn't recognize. Someone named R. Thompson was receiving $500 every month. R. Thompson, Rachel Thompson, David's sister. I sat on the guest room floor staring at those bank statements, feeling like I might throw up. Not only had David been collecting disability money while lying about being paralyzed, but he had been paying his sister to help him do it. I kept searching through the papers and found something even more disturbing. There were printed emails between David and Rachel from 2 years ago. Emma is getting suspicious about the phone calls, one email from David said. Make sure you only call during her grocery shopping trips. Rachel's response was cold and matter-of-fact. Don't worry about Emma. She's too trusting to figure anything out. Besides, she owes you this after what her family did to Dad's business. What was Rachel talking about? My family had never had anything to do with David's father's business. David's father died when David was 12 years old, years before I even met him. I realized Rachel had been helping David lie to me from the beginning, and they had convinced themselves I deserved to be treated this way. I took pictures of all the documents with my phone, then put everything back exactly where I found it. Over the next few days, I started paying attention to details I had ignored before. When I told David I was going grocery shopping, he always seemed happy and told me to take my time. Now I understood why. I decided to test my theory. On Thursday morning, I told David I was going to the store, but instead I parked around the corner and waited. After 30 minutes, I carefully walked back to our house and looked through the kitchen window. The living room was empty. David's wheelchair was there, but David was nowhere to be seen. I crept around to the back of the house and looked through the basement window. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. David was in our basement, walking on a treadmill. He was exercising, sweating, completely healthy. Next to the treadmill was a weight bench and other exercise equipment I had never seen before. My husband hadn't just been lying about being paralyzed. He had been secretly staying in perfect physical condition while I sacrificed everything to take care of him. I watched him exercise for 10 more minutes, tears streaming down my face. Then I quietly went back to my car and actually went grocery shopping, just like I had told him I would. When I came home, David was back in his wheelchair in the living room, looking helpless and weak. "How was your trip, honey?" he asked with fake concern. "Fine," I managed to say. "Just fine." But inside, I was planning my next move. If David wanted to play games, I was ready to beat him at his own game. I spent 3 days planning exactly how to expose David's lies. I needed proof that other people could see, not just my word against his. I also needed witnesses who could help me if David became dangerous. Mrs. Garcia was the only person I could trust completely. When I told her everything I had discovered, her face went pale. "Oh, Emma," she said, reaching across her kitchen table to hold my hand. "I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it was this bad. That poor man has been lying to you for years." "I need your help," I said. "I want to catch him in the act, but I can't do it alone." "Of course, dear. Whatever you need." On Friday morning, I put my plan into action. I told David I was going grocery shopping, just like I had done hundreds of times before. But this time, Mrs. Garcia was waiting in her car around the corner. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked as I got into her passenger seat. "I have to," I said. "I can't live with this lie anymore." We waited 30 minutes, then drove back to my house. Mrs. Garcia parked in the driveway and we both got out. I had my phone ready to record everything. "David," I called out as we entered through the front door. "I forgot my wallet. I just need to grab it and I'll be right back." No answer. The wheelchair was in the living room, empty. David was nowhere to be seen. Mrs. Garcia and I looked at each other. "The basement," I whispered. We walked quietly to the basement door. I could hear the sound of the treadmill running downstairs. "David?" I called out again, louder this time. The treadmill suddenly stopped. I heard scrambling sounds like someone moving quickly. "I'm coming down," I announced, starting down the basement stairs. "Emma, wait!" David's voice called from below. He sounded panicked. "Don't come down here. I fell out of my wheelchair. I'm on the floor." Mrs. Garcia and I exchanged glances. She nodded at me to keep going. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, David was lying on the floor next to the treadmill, trying to look helpless, but he was fully dressed in workout clothes and sweat was dripping from his face. "David," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "please stand up." "Emma, I can't. You know I can't stand up. Help me get back to my chair." "Stand up, David," I repeated, holding my phone up to record. "I know you can." For a long moment, we stared at each other. I could see him trying to decide whether to keep lying or give up the act. Mrs. Garcia stepped forward. "David, I've seen you walking around this house at night. Emma knows the truth. We both know the truth." David's face changed completely. The fake helplessness disappeared, replaced by anger and something that looked almost like hatred. He stood up smoothly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Fine," he said, brushing dust off his workout clothes. "You want the truth? Here's the truth. Yes, I can walk. I've been able to walk for over 3 years. My heart pounded, but I kept my phone steady, recording everything. 3 years, I whispered. "That's right, 3 whole years of watching you run around like my personal slave, and you never questioned it, not once." Mrs. Garcia gasped. "How could you do this to her?" David laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Do this to her? She owed me this. After everything I've been through after my accident, I deserve to have someone take care of me. Emma signed up for this when she married me. "But you lied about being paralyzed," I said, my voice getting stronger. So what? You would have left me if you knew I was better. This way, I got to keep my wife and live comfortably. It's a win-win situation. For who? Mrs. Garcia asked angrily. For me, David said simply. Emma was getting too independent before the accident. She had her own job, her own friends, her own life. This way, she focuses on what really matters, taking care of her husband. The recording was still running. I had everything I needed. You're sick, I whispered. David shrugged. I'm smart. There's a difference. That's when Rachel walked through the basement door. Rachel froze when she saw us all standing in the basement. Her face went white, and she looked like she wanted to run back upstairs. What's going on here? She asked, but her voice was shaky. The truth is finally coming out, I said, still recording with my phone. Your brother just admitted he's been lying about being paralyzed for over 3 years. Rachel looked at David, then at me, then at Mrs. Garcia. Emma, I can explain. Explain what? I asked. Explain how you've been helping him steal disability money? Explain how you've been getting $500 every month to keep quiet about his lies? Rachel's mouth fell open. She didn't know I had found the bank statements. David told you I owed him this because of something my family supposedly did to his father, I continued. But David's father died when David was 12. My family never had any business with him. That's not, Rachel started, then stopped. She couldn't finish the lie. David stepped forward, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked truly angry. Rachel, you were supposed to call before coming over, he said through gritted teeth. I did call. You didn't answer. Because I was exercising, David shouted. Because Emma came home early and ruined everything. Mrs. Garcia stepped between us. That's enough. Emma, we're leaving now, and we're calling the police. Over the next 2 weeks, everything happened very fast. I gave the police my recordings, the bank statements, and all the evidence I had collected. They arrested David for disability fraud and discovered he had been collecting over $120,000 in payments he wasn't entitled to. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. While investigating David's case, the police found out he had been living a double life in more ways than one. He had been leaving the house regularly and had even been seeing another woman for the past year. Her name was Lisa, and she worked at a coffee shop across town. When the police interviewed her, she was completely shocked to learn David was married. He told me he was single, Lisa said. He said he was a personal trainer who worked from home. He seemed so healthy and active. We went hiking together just last weekend. Personal trainer. While I was lifting him in and out of bed every day, David was telling another woman he was a personal trainer. Rachel was charged as an accomplice in the fraud. During her court hearing, she finally told the truth about why she had helped David. He convinced me that Emma had been planning to divorce him before the accident, she said, crying. He said she was only staying with him out of guilt, and that she deserved to work hard to make up for wanting to leave him. But I had never planned to divorce David. I had never even thought about it. We had been happy before the accident, or at least I thought we were. David had created an entire false story to justify treating me like a prisoner in my own home. The legal process took 6 months, but eventually David was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay back all the money he had stolen. Rachel got probation and community service. But the best part wasn't the justice. It was getting my life back. I moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. It was tiny compared to the house David and I had shared, but it felt enormous to me because every inch of it was mine. My old friend Jessica from my marketing job called me after seeing the news story about David's arrest. Emma, I have an opening at my company, she said. It's not as high level as your old position, but it could be a fresh start. I took the job immediately. On my first day back at work in 7 years, I wore a business suit for the first time since David's fake accident. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman looking back at me was stronger than the one who had disappeared 7 years ago. I had survived something terrible, but I had also learned something important. I was capable of much more than I ever knew. As I walked into my new office building that morning, I smiled for the first time in years. My real life was just beginning,